Chapter 403-405. Roar! The sorrowful roar of Sambai resounded throughout Karigakure. All the fighting going on within the village suddenly stopped, some were panicked, some had joy and hope on their faces, while the others were skeptical. The evacuating villages were the panicked ones, a bijou running amok on top of the ongoing civil war. This is the worst nightmare. But compared to the ignorant villagers, the shinobi were not so panicked, they were calmer. They are aware of the fact that the Jinchuriki of Rokubi is not present in Karigakure, so the only Jinchuriki currently present in the village is the Mizukage. And everyone knows that the Mizukage is one of the few perfect Jinchuriki in the shinobi world. As such, he has perfect control over Sambai, so there is no way he will lose control over the bijou even in the liberated state. Has Mizukage-sama finally decided to make his move? This thought resounded in the minds of many shinobi. Terumi Mei is one of these many. Without any need for being reminded, Ao immediately looked in the direction from where the roar came, and after carefully observing the situation with his Byakugan, he described to the shinobi around him, there are several strong chakra reactions in that direction. Aside from Mizukage-sama who has already liberated the bijou, there are 5 more potent chakra reactions. An old man asked Ao with an extremely serious expression, Ao-kun, can you be absolutely certain that Mizukage-sama is among them? Byakugan wouldn't deceive me, that is definitely Mizukage-sama's chakra, and currently he seems to be covered in the Sambai's chakra. The density of chakra around Mizukage-sama is so overwhelming that I am having difficulty in distinguishing other small chakra reactions. Moreover, it's not just the violently overwhelming chakra, for some reason, I am getting the vibe that Mizukage-sama is extremely angry over something. Ao said his conclusion. The fact that Yondaime has to rely on the bijou sealed inside him already means that the 4 shinobi he is facing are giving him quite a hard time. The old man who asked the question from Ao was a bit flustered now. What sort of people can force the Mizukage in such a situation that he would have to rely on the Sambai? Mei questioned with a frown, are those people any of the subordinates under Momochi Zabuza? Ao nodded, Momochi Zabuza along with the Samahata is one of them, but I do not think that the other 3 are his subordinates. Mei continued, if that is the case, do you recognize any of the other 3? I do recognize one of them, only he can have such monstrous chakra despite not being a Jinchuriki. It is Hoshigaki Kisame all right. As for the others, I am certain of their identities, but I can make some guesses for their identities. Ao said. Mei asked, and what are your guesses? One of the other 2 seems to share a similar type of chakra as that of extinct Kagaya clan shinobi. As for the other one, I am not sure, I have never seen that type of chakra. Its color is blood red. But what's strange is that the other one seems to possess a dojutsu type chakra. Ao said his guesses. A dojutsu type? Both Mei and the old man questioned at the same time. Their brains were running at fast speed and trying to figure out who can that person be. After all, the numbers of dojutsu possessing clans are not so many in the shinobi world. So Hoshigaki Kisame, an unknown Kagaya clan survivor, and an unknown shinobi with an unknown dojutsu are also present around Mizukage-sama, huh? Who is fighting whom? Mei asked again. The 4 of them seem to be confronting Mizukage-sama, Ao said with a serious expression. All 4 of them? Mei's expression changed upon hearing Ao's words. No wonder Mizukage-sama has been unable to quell the coup d'état up until now. Others are supporting this coup too. Now she has to consider whether to rush there in order to support the Mizukage or stay here and deal with these traitors. The old man saw through Mei's dilemma and said, I think we are more than enough to clean up things here. You and Ao-kun should go and support Mizukage-sama. This will also give them a chance to check on the condition of Mizukage. Besides, even if something is wrong with him, Karatachi Yagura is still the current Mizukage, and therefore, his life is more important than anyone's life in the village. After listening to the old man's words, Mei did not hesitate anymore and instructed the squad following her, go. With Mei's order, the squad following her nodded, and under Mei's lead, they rushed in the direction where Mizukage was fighting the 4 enemies. On the Mizukage side, smash, crack. Accompanied by bone-cracking sounds, Takashi who was swept away by the turtle tails of Mizukage collided with a house and again broke a few more bones. Getting out of the pile of rubble, he coughed violently, then wiped the blood flowing from the corners of his mouth and said with an excited expression, never expected that Yondaime when using the power of bijou would be so strong, it makes my bones tingle in excitement. Come on. I am all up for it. The physique of Kagaya clan shinobi is different when compared to others, as such bone injuries that may affect the combat power of normal shinobi are nothing for those of the Kagaya clan. Moreover, those of the Kagaya clan are generally the battle-hungry types, so fighting monsters such as the Mizukage obviously excites them. Majida said to the only person who was not focusing on the battle against the Mizukage, what do you think you are doing, Kisame? The 2 of us alone cannot hold off the Mizukage. Come on, don't be such a buzzkill. I was just getting myself a nice little sword here. Since Zabuza is not up to the standards at being able to wield it, I decided to take it for myself. With Samahata in hand, I think we will have quite a good chance of defeating Yondaime, don't you think, Samahata? Kisame said as he removed all the bandages wrapping Samahata. Boom? Majida said nothing more. Samahata is known for devouring chakra, and using it in the fight against the Mizukage who is a Jinchuriki would be advantageous. As for what happened to Zabuza, well, that guy is unable to wield Samahata anymore because the chakra of Kisame and Yagura is tastier for Samahata. As such, the sword betrayed Zabuza. After leaving Zabuza, the sword was rushing towards Yagura to eat the chakra of Sambai, but midway, Kisame appeared and managed to tame the Samahata, which did not surprise the people here. Kisame is known as the monster of Karigakure and tailless-tailed beast for a reason. Samahata in the hands of Kisame would really work well, and now they can easily defeat a Jinchuriki. Now, they have Takashi to hold off the Mizukage in terms of taijutsu, while Kisame uses the Samahata to devour Sanbai's chakra, and just when the three were planning to kill the Mizukage for good, Majida suddenly said, I don't think we have the time to take care of the Mizukage anymore. Many shinobi under the lead of the Kunoichi from the Terumi clan are rushing here to support the Mizukage. I think it would be best if we retreat. Kisame and Takashi took a second to process Majida's words and instantly decided to retreat. After all, even if they are individually strong shinobi and have the ability to defeat everyone, fighting a battle of attrition without any substantial gain is pretty pointless. As such, retreating right now is the best option, else there is no telling what would be the consequences. In the blink of an eye, Majida, Kisame, and Takashi flashed away and disappeared from their position, but not before devouring a large part of Sanbai's chakra so as to stop the yondaime from being able to chase them. Zabuza has also fled upon realizing that with his current strength he stands no chance of defeating the Mizukage. But how can Mizukage allow these 4 people to flee so easily? So, he obviously gave chase after the 3 new recruits of Akatsuki. On the roof of an abandoned house in Karigakure. On the roof of this house, a large murder of crows gathered together from all the directions of the village and took the form of Itachi. He had witnessed everything that happened in Karigakure and is still doing so by using his crows. After seeing everything that happened in Karigakure, Itachi had quite a lot of thoughts running through his mind. Whoosh! At this moment, another figure appeared on the roof. Itachi did not need to look at this person to recognize his identity. This is because he knew it was none other than Uchiha Tsukihei. After her fierce battle against Obito, Tsukihei left the Mizukage building, and of course, she did not leave Hiramakarei behind. Itachi observed the state of Tsukihei and asked, Tsukihei-san, are you alright? Tsukihei nodded, I am alright, just a bit tired after my battle against Tobi. Itachi nodded and said, and did you manage to kill him? Tsukihei shook her head, unfortunately no, he might have realized that he had no chance of winning so he retreated. Itachi nodded and did not question anymore. This time Tsukihei questioned, so what all happened in Karigakure while I was fighting Tobi? Itachi nodded and started explaining all the events that happened in the village. After he was done, Tsukihei had a thoughtful look on her face, that is to say, neither Terumi Mei nor Momochi Zabuza is suitable enough to be the next Mizukage. I suppose I will think about this a little bit more and then decide. After a pause here, she continued with a serious expression, however, it really concerns me that not only Hoshigaki Kisame, but 2 more shinobi with strength higher than that of an elite jonin have joined the ranks of Akatsuki. A user of Shikatsu Miyako and a Ketsuryugen user. Day by day, Akatsuki is growing more and more frightening. Itachi can't help but nod. Is this the true meaning of the butterfly effect? Tsukihei can't help but think. Sigh. I guess we will have to focus on further increasing our strengths, Tsukihei. Itachi nodded. For the first time since awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan, Itachi has started to feel that he needs to further increase his strength if they want to stop the Akatsuki. Because the organization is becoming more and more of a threat to the stability of the shinobi world than one can imagine. Anyway. Cough cough, when Tsukihei was again about to speak something, she suddenly coughed out blood and collapsed on the floor. Itachi was surprised and immediately helped her. Tsukihei-san, it doesn't seem that you are in good condition. With the help of Itachi, she somehow managed to stand up and said, Don't worry Itachi-kun, it's just chakra exhaustion. After some time of rest I will be alright. Anyway, we should hide until the situation in Karigakure calms down. After that, we will decide on the course of action to take from here on. Itachi nodded and after sealing Hiramakarei in a storage scroll, he along with Tsukihei left the roof of the house. A few minutes later both of them arrived at an empty house in Karigakure. Here Tsukihei sat on a chair and took some rest, and while doing so, she can't help but think, guess I overdid it, huh? As she started to observe the movements going on in Karigakure. It's really pitiful that one of the 5 great shinobi villages has reached such a point. Tsukihei can't help but mutter, as she observed the state of the village. Perhaps this would have been the same situation if Konoha Shidachiha clan started the coup d'etat? Itachi can't help but mutter with some sadness in his tone. Tsukihei was silent upon hearing Itachi's words. If the Uchiha clan had started a coup d'etat, then that would have been the start of the 4th Great Shinobi War, the biggest and most destructive war ever seen. Tsukihei said with a mild smile, but that situation would not arise to that point so, there is no reason to worry. Itachi nodded. After this short conversation, Tsukihei focused her attention back outside. The village has obviously become a mess and a large part of the village population has been evacuated to shelter, but this does not mean that all the villagers have been evacuated. Those who did not trust the village authorities, or those who did not have the opportunity to escape to the shelter rushed outside the village their families with the hopes of escaping the influence of the ongoing civil war. The leader and initiator of the civil war may have fled the scene, but the dissatisfaction, fear, anger, sadness, grief, and other emotions buried in the hearts of the populace is not so easy to resolve. The ambitious and traitorous are still fighting fiercely against the loyal ones, then there are those from the other villages who are taking the advantage of internal strife and causing damage to the village and causing further chaos. Of course, Tsukihei does not know that many of them are transformed Zetsu clones who are breeding further conflicts in order to cause as much damage to the village as possible, thus her thoughts. But anyway, should I kill Yugura or should I not? Was the thought on her mind at this moment. To be honest, this kind of chaos is really convenient for her to assassinate the Yondaime Mizukage to complete the mission, but from the information given to her by Itachi, it is pretty obvious that Karatachi Yugura has regained himself and is no longer a puppet in Obito's hands. While Tsukihei was busy considering several things, Itachi noticed that her hair was in a mess because of being untidy, so he took out a hairband from one of his pockets and handed it over to her. Tsukihei-san, here. Tsukihei thought that it was the scroll of Hiramakari that Itachi was giving her, but when she saw that it was a hairband she was surprised and asked, "Do you even carry such a thing as a spare?" Itachi nodded, "Don't you carry one yourself? Your hair is quite long, won't they get in the way of a fight if they are left untied?" Tsukihei was speechless. "I have never thought about it, tied or untied, it's not that big of a problem." Anyway, while Tsukihei tidied her hair, Itachi also passed her the scroll of Hiramakari then said, "Anyway, what are we going to do now, Tsukihei-san?" Tsukihei asked after a bit of silence, "Have you prepared what Kuroto-sama asked you to?" Itachi nodded, Tsukihei nodded, "All right, the situation may have changed but our goal is still the same. We will still be doing what we came here for, only a few things will change." Itachi said, "All right, in that case, I will make the preparations." While Tsukihei and Itachi were discussing their further course of action, Mizukage and several shinobi under his command who were chasing after Kisame, Takashi, and Majida were forced to return to the village because the situation in the village was becoming more and more unstable. Eliminating the traitors is certainly very important, but stabilizing the situation in the village is more important for Yagura. Not to mention, Kisame, Takashi, and Majida when combined together are a force to be reckoned with, so defeating them will take a lot of time, and there is no telling what will be the state of the village by then. As such, Yagura, as the Mizukage, had no choice but to delay his revenge on the Akatsuki and focus his attention on the village for now. It took a few hours, but with the joint efforts of the Mizukage, several elders, and many elite Kiri shinobi, the traitors partaking in the civil war were either died or managed to flee, so overall, the situation in Karigakure was stabilized. The casualty count was in thousands, and this casualty count not only included Kiri shinobi, but even the common folks who couldn't escape in time. The death toll is so high that the streets of Karigakure were piled with corpses, walls covered in blood, and a heavy stench of death lingered in the village. Even nature cried for such a high death toll. At some point, while the conflict was still going on, the rain started to befall the village and it continued until every last corpse wasn't buried. When the rain eventually came to an end, it washed away all the blood on the streets of Karigakure, both literally and perhaps even metaphorically, or maybe not. Not long after, the rain clouds cleared, the soft light of the rising sun appeared on the horizon. The light of this morning sun gave a new breath of life to the village that has always been hidden in the bloody mist. Yonde Mizukage, who had been busy all night with various things, did not have any time to rest or enjoy this rare morning sun. He directly convened a high-level meeting in the destroyed Mizukage building. All the elders and the elites who were part of the meeting were a bit nervous about what's about to come. After all, the fear of the Yonde Mizukage is still evident in the hearts of all, and nobody here knows the exact purpose of the meeting. This is also the reason why, despite being a gathering of all the high-level shinobi of Karigakure, nobody had the courage to even whisper a word. Seeing everyone's silence, and looking at the fearful expression on the faces of all, Yagura sighed. Of course, what else can I expect after what I had put them through? Since no one had the courage to speak, so Yagura had to break the silence. After all, his reason for convening this meeting is already decided, so he stood up in his position and addressed to all the people present. Without beating around the bush, Yagura directly revealed the fact that for over a year now he has been under the control of Akatsuki organization, and it was only yesterday night he managed to break free. The sudden reveal of the news caused an uproar in the room. Nobody could believe their ears, and they had to listen to it thrice to believe that what they heard was indeed not wrong. Yonde Mizukage, Karatachi Yagura, became a puppet in the hands of Akatsuki organization? When everyone realized the gravity of this information, a silence dawned upon the room. Everyone was so shocked that they didn't know how to respond. Without a doubt, Karatachi Yagura is not only the strongest shinobi in the current Karigakure, but he is also the Jinchuriki of Sanbai, and not just any Jinchuriki, but a perfect Jinchuriki. Someone who has complete control over the bija sealed inside him, and such a shinobi became nothing more than a puppet. If this is not ridiculous, then what is? Even if everyone had expected something to be wrong with the Mizukage for a while now, but when they hear the fact that Mizukage was being controlled by Akatsuki, it does shock them to their very core. After the shock, there was anger not only at Akatsuki for controlling the Mizukage but even at the Mizukage for becoming a puppet. However, can Mizukage really be blamed? If it had been before, maybe they could have blamed him and his lack of ability, but now? How can they? It was only a few days ago when the news of the defeat of Tri-Alliance at the hands of Akatsuki in the Summit War resounded throughout the entire shinobi world, and in that battle, the Yondaime Kazakage inexplicably went missing. There has been no news of Kazakage since then. From this news, everyone knows that the Akatsuki organization is not just any run-of-the-mill organization. Their strength is more than enough to suppress the combined strength of at least 2 great shinobi villages at the same time. And when people know and understand the real feats and true strength of Akatsuki, it is not very difficult for them to accept the fact that Mizukage became a puppet in the hands of Akatsuki. This also explains why he suddenly became so different a year ago after the second Gakage summit, and suddenly sent an elite shinobi squad to Amigakure in support of Akatsuki. When all was said and done, every detail about Akatsuki Yagura knew, however minuscule it may have been, was revealed to everyone. An awkward atmosphere dawned in the meeting room. Everyone knew that even if Yondaime Mizukage is not be blamed for the losses their village suffered in the past year, but it is also understood that he cannot remain the Mizukage any longer for all the losses the village suffered because of him. After all, someone has to take the blame for everything, and it has to be Mizukage because his leadership brought such chaos to the village. But can anyone here ask the Mizukage to abdicate? Or does anyone here have the guts to dethrone him? No, because that would be incredibly foolish. The current of Karigakure has withered to its weakest point. Hardly any high-level combat personnel are left in the village, and at this time, if they were to condemn Yagura or force him to abdicate, then that would be tantamount to self-harm. Yet, Yagura can't remain the Mizukage any longer for what his leadership brought to the village. Such a dilemma, in such a situation, if Yagura-sama were to willingly abdicate, was a momentary thought in the mind of someone. Yagura also realizes this. He need not be reminded. While everyone was troubled as to what they should do from here on out, Yagura got up and bowed to everyone. Please forgive me for what my leadership brought to the village. Once the matter of the civil war is completely settled, I shall take the blame of everything and abdicate from the position of Mizukage. Hearing that Mizukage is willing to abdicate, the elders breathed a sigh of relief. This is undoubtedly the best solution. The blame will be taken by Yagura himself, so the next Mizukage can begin anew, and Yagura can still work as a Karigakure shinobi. After a few more things were discussed and settled, and the meeting was concluded, Yagura led Terumi-mei, Ao, as well as the remaining elites and other senior officials of the village to the underground floors of the Mizukage building. The reason was obvious. They have to see what exactly happened on the underground floors yesterday night while the civil war was going on. And looking at the scene before them, whether it was Mei, or Ao, the elders, the elites, or even the Mizukage himself, everyone was taken aback. One of the jonin crouched down and while tracing his hands on the metal sticking on the ground, he muttered, I can be certain that this sword was a Mito, for it to have melted. Another jonin looked at Mei and questioned, the metal used in Mito is extremely resistant to high temperatures. Was it melted using Yotan? Mei shook her head and said with a serious expression, no, Yotan can melt things, but its working principle lies in corrosion and dissolution, so it couldn't have been done through Yotan. The way this sword and all the rest of the swords have melted shows that they have been heated to their melting point. Ao looked at the entire floor with his Byakugan and said with a solemn expression, it has to be fire, but no ordinary fire can do such damage. But who could use such a fire that is capable of melting such high-grade metals? Questioned another shinobi. Mei asked Ao, are there any chakra signatures left that we can give us any clue? Ao shook his head, no, however much I try to see, there are no chakra signs left here. At this time Yagura said, I can feel the breath of the man who controlled me, and he most likely fought against someone here, so probably that person. Mei hurriedly asked, who? Yagura shook his head, I do not know, but I can be certain that it wasn't anyone from the village. As for the result, it is pretty much clear given the fact that I regained consciousness. Upon hearing this, everyone's faces were gloomier. Two outsiders fought in the most secret and the core part of the village, the place which hosts records of almost all the secrets of their village, yet no one in the village was aware of it? This is beyond humiliating for them. Somewhere in the land of water, Kisame, Takashi, and Majida, who had managed to get rid of Karigakure's chase, were now sitting by a small stream, resting and treating their wounds as well as pondering over the actions they must take from here on out. Cough cough. After coughing out blood, Takashi cursed, damn it, where the hell is this Toby? Naturally, Takashi's mood is a bit upset. After all, the day he joined Akatsuki, he is already being chased by the Mizukage, although it's no such a big problem in the big picture. However, given that there are no signs of Toby whatsoever during the whole fiasco, nor anyone else from Akatsuki is contacting them after all the trouble they have gone through, it is obvious that he is annoyed. I think it's worth celebrating that we managed to escape from the chase of Mizukage and so many of Karigakure shinobi without any serious injury. Kisame said with a playful smirk. He wasn't being serious here, as was clearly evident from his tone. To be honest, he wasn't much afraid of Mizukage, rather he is confident enough to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Mizukage and still come out of it alive. After all, Kisame's overall strength with Samahata in his hands is easily mid-Kage level. In the original story, Kisame managed to easily subdue the Jinchuriki of Yanbi, could push Killer Bee to use the seventh tail of Hachibi and still be the dominant party of the fight, and even forced Might Guy to use the seventh gate and still survived. Along with several other feats that speak for his strength, as such he wouldn't have had much of a problem in dealing with the Mizukage. The only thing that could have troubled him would have been Mizukage's Aqua Mirror Jutsu, but he would have had found a way to deal with that jutsu too. After all, every jutsu has its weakness, you just have to find it. While Takashi and Kisame expressed their thoughts, Majida had a thoughtful face. He was wondering what could have gone wrong with Toby that the Mizukage who was supposed to be in a genjutsu suddenly managed to release himself. At this time, Majida suddenly looked vigilantly in one direction, because he suddenly noticed someone in the vision of his Ketsuryugen and said loudly, "Who are you? Come out." Majida's loud shout and his battle-ready stance alerted both Kisame and Takashi, and both of them were instantly battle-ready too, while they vigilantly looked in the direction where Majida was looking. Shush shush. And for a while, the sound of grass swaying could be heard which made the three frown. "Come on out now, or you won't remain in the condition to be able to walk anymore," Takashi said as a bone spike grew out of his hand. Eek, the sound came from behind the bushes and instantly a figure jumped out of the bushes, and no, I am not the enemy. I was just sitting there and observing the three of you and trying to figure out what's it like to poop. All three of them frowned. Poop? The person nodded, right. Kisame asked with a smirk, and did you manage to figure it out? But the figure shook his head and said with a sigh, unfortunately no, can any one of you tell me what's it like to poop? Kisame said with a chuckle, ha ha ha, he is sure is a funny guy. Takashi lifted the bone spike and asked Majida and Kisame, should I kill him? Majida shook his head and said, no, not yet. Look closely, he is also wearing Akatsuki cloak, not to mention his mask. It's just like Toby but it's different, his mask is white and the aura he is giving off is different. Kisame said upon taking a closer look. After a bit of observing this person, Majida said, additionally, when I see him with my Ketsuryugen, all I see is an empty shell. It is as if he has no organs whatsoever, and his sense of presence. Just what exactly are you? The white spiraled masked fellow, wearing the traditional Akatsuki cloak, folded both of his hands over his chest and said proudly, I am Toby. Huh? All three frowned. Wasn't that guy Toby? White Toby nodded. He is also Toby, but he is junior. And I am the senior. You all can call me Toby Senior. Junior, senior, what exactly is up with these guys? Takashi muttered with a frown while looking at the Toby Senior. Kisame said, both of them seem to share similar personalities. So, I suppose it makes sense if they're both Toby. I think it would be interesting to see both of them at the same time. At this time Majida asked again, what happened to the other Toby? And why did the Mizuki suddenly regain himself? That is a bit hard to explain. Anyway, I have been ordered by my junior senior to escort the three of you to the headquarters. My senior, Zetsu, will explain the entire situation to the three of you, so follow me. Toby Senior said and started to walk in a particular direction. Kisame, Takashi, and Majida looked at each other, and after a bit of mulling they put away their weapons and followed Toby Senior. On their way, Kisame asked, so, where are we going? Toby Senior said enthusiastically, we will be going to the Land of Waves. There we will meet up with another new recruit. After we have her in the team, we will go to one of the Akatsuki hideouts in the Land of Waves, where we will meet up with Zetsu and Toby Jr. Majida questioned, and who is this new recruit? Toby Senior took some time in thinking, then said, her name. I think it was called Kahayo. Kisame narrowed his eyes at the mention of that name and repeated, Yuki Kahayo, huh? Well, I'll be damned. He didn't speak any further, because that Kunoichi is really extremely strong one. No wonder Akatsuki would recruit her. Lead the way then, the three said and went in the direction of the Land of Waves. Somewhere inside a cave in the Land of Water, a spiraling void appeared and Obito, still in his Toby, or better yet Toby Jr. disguise, walked out of it. Currently, he had a fatigued look. His consumptions, along with the cost of using Izanagi, wasn't any less. With Obito's arrival, Zetsu also sprouted out of the ground and Black Zetsu asked Obito, what happened to you? Who was the intruder in the Mizuki building? Obito did not reply. He was silent and thinking over something. At this time Zetsu leaned forward and saw the missing arm of Obito, then questioned, the intruder was able to hurt you so badly. It wouldn't happen to be the leader of Amatsukami, would it? After all, the last time Obito was hurt so badly was in the battle against the Yondaime Hokage during the Kyuubi's attack. Other than that, Zetsu can't remember Obito being pushed to such an extent since Obito awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. However, Obito shook his head and said with a gloomy tone, it wasn't Yama, but Homusubi. White Zetsu smirked, heh. A battle between two Manjikyu Sharingan users? Heh, I would have loved to watch that battle. Anyway, since Homusubi is now dead, we have one less problem to worry about. Contrary to the positive answer Zetsu expected to hear, Obito shook his head as he removed his mask. No, I was unable to kill Homusubi. This obviously shocked Zetsu, but he was more shocked when he saw the grayish-white pupil in Obito's left eye socket. You even used the Izanagi and still couldn't kill him? Using Izanagi means that Obito already died once while fighting Homusubi, and this is obviously surprising. It is hard to imagine that someone could kill Obito who has Kamui as dojutsu. That woman was playing with me the whole time. Obito muttered in a gloomy tone. Woman? White Zetsu muttered in surprise, then said, Homusubi is a woman? Obito nodded. I was surprised too, but it doesn't really matter whether Homusubi is a man, a woman, a child, a beast, or something else entirely. What's important here is that she seems to know the mechanism of Kamui, and she utilized this knowledge very well. In fact, the approach she used to kill me even surprised me. If it hadn't been for Izanagi, I would have surely died. While Zetsu asked Obito, does she also know your true identity? Obito said with a thoughtful expression, she did not do anything specific that would give away the fact that she knows me, but I am not so sure. Not so sure. Black Zetsu thought, Amatsukami seems to know the secret of both Nagato and Obito. Is it possible that Amatsukami also knows about Madara? Or about me? But then he shook his head. Nobody other than Kagaya knows me, not Obito, not Madara, not Indra, not Ajura, nor Hagoromo, neither Hamura and certainly not Amatsukami. It is impossible for them to know who he truly is. Obito continued, well anyway, I did manage to figure out one of her dojutsu. It is related to buffing the physical aspects of anything she wants to the extent she can increase the strength of her Susanoo quite a lot. Black Zetsu said, that's quite a practical ability, as long as she has enough chakra and visual prowess, she might even be able to turn a dried wooden twig into something as hard and strong as current Hokage's adamantine staff. Obito nodded and said, increase the threat level of Homusubi to just below that of Yama, given all the abilities she has, killing her won't be an easy task for weaker members. Zetsu nodded and relayed the information to his other clones. At this moment, Obito sat on a small rock and thought about a lot of things. The defeat today was a very big blow for him. Not only his plan of destroying Karigakure was ruined, but it also revealed the fact that the enemy knows the intelligence about his abilities through and through. All these events since the War of the Summit, especially the ones related to Amatsukami, are making him feel powerless. This kind of powerlessness reminded him of the scene of Rin's death. At that time he was unable to do anything to save Rin. Black Zetsu said, the threat of Amatsukami is too great. Even if we do not talk about the other members, the threat posed by Yama is too much. The only reason we survived that time is that Geto Mazo is indestructible, else everyone, even Nagato, would have died. He did not speak anything about Yama's golden sword, or those black balls, but as Kagaya's will, Black Zetsu obviously knows that those who are able to use Godadama are incredibly strong. In fact, Nagato would have died, had it not been for Toby Sr. to have attached himself to Nagato and saved him in time. Obito asked with a frown, so what are you suggesting? Black Zetsu said, it's time to make up your mind. As soon as Black Zetsu spoke, Obito's face turned gloomy, his eyes turned cold, and he said in a chilling tone, do not speak of it. But Black Zetsu was unaffected and said, it is yours to begin with, so why the hesitation? After a brief silence, Obito shook his head, it is not mine. It doesn't belong to me. Does that mean you want to give up on Project Tsuki no Mi? Asked Black Zetsu.